right, here's what we're going to do. We have a friend panel. Everybody say, hey, what's up? I want to let you be introduced to some of my friends, some old, some new. Here's what we're going to do. For the next 51 minutes, we're going to do a worship leader roundtable. It's going to go in two parts. Part one, we're going to share. I'm going to ask some questions. We're just going to have a conversation about practical things that we're working through in ministry. This is not meant to be a who's at a bigger church. There's none of that. This is literally about us. We have people from big churches, little churches, inner city churches, suburban churches, rural churches, all over the map. Why? Because we believe that everybody has something to contribute, and we all have something that we can learn today. Then we're going to break up into smaller groups and do a little roundtable time together in like groups of 3 or 4. You ready? Okay. So I'm going to go down the line. I want you to introduce yourself, and we got to keep these tight. So I want 3 things. Your name, and when I say 3 things, I want your name is 1, and the name of the church that you serve at, or the ministry that you're a part of. And number 3, I want you to give 1 sentence to give us context. Like if I say, I'm Mark Allen, I'm a worship pastor at Emmanuel Christian Center in Spring Lake Park. It's a multi-campus church. That's too much. See, I went too far. So you got to really think. All right, you guys ready? All right, here we go. My name is Mark Allen. I'm at Emmanuel Christian Center. It's a 2-campus church, northern Minneapolis.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is DeMarcus Green. I am a minister of music and music director at Spirit and Truth Worship Center, very inner city, over north and 33rd and Penn Avenue.
Serena Denniston, formerly worship ministry leader at Speak the Word Church International, newly to River Valley, Edina area campus. Woo woo! And I love God and I love people and I love music. There you go.
Hi, I'm Chelsea. I'm the worship pastor at Celebration Church. That's my crew, and that's all I have to say.
I'm Cortland Pickens. I'm worship leader at Shiloh Temple International Ministries, North Minneapolis campus. So.
Hey guys, my name is Josh Edwards, and I'm a missionary to Minnesota with a ministry called Revive Minnesota.
Whoop, whoop. I'm Nate Saban. I serve at a church on the east side of St. Paul called Grace Place. It's a non-denominational, multicultural church.
My name is Chris DePoyan. I'm the worship leader at Riverway Church in Champlin. It's a mobile church. We have church out of a high school.
Mark Jerf, serve at a Wilmer Assembly of God in rural, small-town Minnesota, about 2 hours west of here.
I'm Gina Zarletti. I am currently leading worship at Substance Church. We have a campus downtown Minneapolis and also in Spring Lake Park.
Hey, I'm Trinice Jones, representing the urban Jerusalem North Side all day. And worship is not just singing slow songs.
Hey guys, my name is Pav, not Pat, Pav, and I am the worship pastor at Plymouth Covenant Church.
Hi guys, Brian Vaughn, worship pastor at Grace Church in Eden Prairie.
Hi, my name is Jeff Dio, traveling worship leader and music professor here at North Central University. Love it. All right, so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to pose a question, and you don't have to all answer every question. I'd encourage you not to, but if there's something you want to share, we're going to keep our comments tight and concise because the goal is not to hear ourselves talk. The goal is to be a resource for our friends here. Everybody good? All right. Here's what I want to ask. I want some of you to share what's a current major challenge that you're facing in your ministry right now. It could be like, man, we don't have drummers. We got to figure out how to create drummers. What's a challenge that you're facing in your team right now? Be real. Be vulnerable. You're all a bunch of perfect people. Teach me some things, please.
Yeah, I'd say my challenge right now is we just had our first church-wide auditions, and so we have about 5 new members of the team. And before them coming on, we've had about the same crew for like 5 years. So the challenge now is investing in them and giving them the time and materials they need to really incorporate them and make them feel like just as a part of the team as everyone else is. So, yeah.
I will say it's always a consistent challenge with budget. Hello, somebody. Because everybody wants to get paid, right? But it's also important to instill in people and to drive home the point that, you know, if we're doing what we're doing for the Lord and that he's getting glorified, then the rest will come, the rest will follow. But again, I think it's always challenging because, you know, musicians, especially musicians that feel and know that they're good at what they do, they're going to want to be compensated, and they want to be compensated with what they feel is fair. And it's always establishing that relationship with the people that you're in co-labor with to understand the heart of why they're doing it. Because if your heart is not in it and it's not pure, then sometimes that can be a difficulty as well. So that's my.
How many of you would say there's something that you don't have that you wish you had? I want to see a show of hands. All right, put those hands up high, for real. Okay. I want you to recognize this. We tend to look across town and think, oh, they got it all. I could look across at any one of you and think, oh, they got it. They're doing better because they don't have the problem that I have. But we isolate ourselves. And there is so much opportunity. I just want to throw this thought at you, to not stay isolated, but to reach out to somebody else and to go, hey, I don't have a clue what to do about this. How are you handling it? Because the odds are that there's somebody else 10 miles away from you who's working through the same issue that you are. And you'd never know it because we live in these little islands we call churches. In the most socially, technologically advanced era, we're the most isolated we've ever been. And there is an opportunity. This is not just for you to hear words and thoughts. This is for us to start to practice and model this and say, okay, what can I do to engage with somebody else?
Hey, Mark.
Go ahead.
I love what you're saying. The church I serve in is relatively small, a couple hundred people on a good day. And if I had said our challenge, it's being consistent. We try to do really great, excellent music, even though we're relatively small. And so there's often, lack of personnel. And, well, it's summertime right now, so, oh my word, trying to just keep a band going it's a challenge, much less having me be in the house. So that's tough all the time. And one thing, like we do it's sort of a gospel-infused kind of music, and we got one horn player, a trumpet player who's probably the most faithful member of our band, is one guy with a trumpet. And, like we want to do horn arrangements. He's playing, the stabs. Bop, ba-de-bop, bop, bop, bop. One guy. And I talked with our guy Pete, and I was saying, Pete, I love what you're doing. You're so faithful, but really we need a section, to sound like what we're supposed to sound like. And what we did that has at times worked really great is we did reach out to some other folks. I reached out to some folks at Josh's church where he was at the time. And we figured out, well, we could have a horn section once a month, and we could let Lighthouse Church have a horn section once a month, and another church in town that's got another player, and so I encouraged Pete to form a horn section and go serve in different places where he could be really effective,
That's cool.
What else? Challenges. You could snap your fingers and have it change tomorrow. What would it be?
3 more notes in my vocal range higher. Just when I hear you sing, Mark, I'm like, I just had a couple more notes if I could play guitar like Chris, or just, I think it's the giftings of others sometimes just that my flesh battles with. Sure, we'd like to have, deeper relationships on our team, and we don't have more equipment and more stuff. But often it's the lust of the flesh, lust of the eyes, boastful pride of life that my flesh wants the most of. And to be settled with, I am all he says I am. I'm all, he's given me what he needs me to have to do what I need to do. And that's where I feel like I'm at today. And some of the challenges you asked about, Mark, is I think that we're faced with right now. It's a great challenge for me is seeing the next generation come up and having our church be really okay with the next generation leading the church. And so that's one of the blessings I'm watching happen at Grace Church and trying to facilitate as well.
I think a challenge in just worship ministry in general, kind of piggybacking off what he was just saying and what you all were saying, is that like we are all on the same team. Like you're at this small church, you're at this big church, you're at this church with all the lights, you're at this church with one spotlight, you're at this church with one guitar player, you have 17 electric guitar players. We're all doing the same thing for the same reason. And I think that sometimes, like how they mix their horn sections, like you get them this week, you get them this week. I think we think that we can't, like, well, that's that church. And we can't call them and ask them a favor, or we can't call them and ask them advice. Like, and I think it just gets so easy. And in the world of social media and what you see on social media and what you see of this, I think it gets so easy to forget that we are all he says that we are, and that your church is your church, you're doing your thing, but we are all on the same team. We're all reaching people for the kingdom. We're all leading people into worship. We are all doing the exact same thing every Sunday morning, no matter what it looks like. And so I think the challenge for us as worship leaders and as members of worship teams and as members of congregations is to remember that and not be competitive with other places and other people, and to lift each other up and to celebrate the victories of other people, and to just know that, like Mark said, not everybody has it together all the time. So just to know that like there are resources and there are people that you can call, and that all of us need to just be on the same team and know that we're all here to bring people closer to Jesus and to usher people into the presence every Sunday. And I'll just stop now. Yep.
I just want to piggyback onto that and say, especially to worship leaders out there, don't hold closely to people. Don't hold tightly to them. We don't own them. They're not ours. They don't belong to our church. We had something recently where there was a ministry, a parachurch ministry, that was taking a lot of our musicians in town for doing things on Sundays, and it seemed to be drawing away, and I talked to another music pastor in town about it, and we just kind of prayed about it and just came to a conclusion of we're not going to hold tightly. We're going to send them out, and we're going to let God take care of us, and we're going to send. So just don't hold tightly to people.
I wanted to piggyback on kind of what everyone's been saying. For me, my biggest challenge is finding consistent people. It seems like once we get the alto section good, our sopranos are missing, or somebody's sick, or so for me, or the band. So for me, it's really just finding a consistent sound, some consistent people, you know. So that's been my biggest challenge at my church.
Yeah, for me, do you guys ever have sound guys that they're
we all know.
Hey, I heard you mute me, dude. You better.
Chris is the man.
Hey, let's all hear it for our sound guys in the house. Oh my gosh. Splendid. Just splendid. But in other places, what is the look, man, I'll tell you what. A humble sound guy is worth like 8,000 bags of gold. I mean, just for real.
Hey, you know what there, Josh? I'm over here. Hi, I'm not, yeah, here I am. You know what? They're saying the same thing about a humble worship leader too, bro. Come on now! Come on, sound people! Come on, you're out of the house. If we could just get a humble worship leader in the house, that would be awesome. Sorry.
All right, I have nothing to say.
Look, we got an audio production track here, so there are people at the conference. Anyways.
Are you done? Yeah. Okay.
I don't have to be.
It's your conference. I submit to you. But for real, it's like a big deal in our church right now. We had major changeover in our sound guys, and maybe some guys that have maybe overstayed their time and power tripped and did these kind of things, they're not around anymore. And so the challenge is now is we're trying to start at square one, establishing a culture in the sound and tech department of humility and submission to one another out of reverence for Christ. And so that's a big deal for us right now. We're just trying to figure that. Also, another challenge that we're experiencing is I was at Lighthouse. I'm still there. I still am a part of the worship team in Rosemount. But we just hired a new worship leader. And what's weird is that I was the worship pastor for 10 years there. And now taking a back seat and going to be this guy's biggest fan, just playing drums or playing keys or singing and just being a supportive role. That's a challenge for me of like, I don't know if you guys have experienced this before, but just transition. Just feel like the body of Christ is in transition. Can anybody relate to that right now? Even among worshipers and worship teams and positions, and God's just changing stuff around. So that's an issue right now. It's exciting, but it's also scary because I don't know where I fit in my church. It's kind of weird.
I would say one of the challenges is what Jeff was talking about this morning, about a healthy way to incorporate different styles into different congregations so everybody's church doesn't think their way and their style is the way to worship without, making a church lose its heartbeat or lose its identity. So trying to find a way to continuously incorporate different styles so people understand what the body of Christ truly looks like in regard to worship, in regard to genre, in regard to style, and all of that. I feel like a lot of times it's like what you were saying, when we do our way, we're like, yeah, now this is worship. But when you do your way, it's like, oh, that's cool. That's good for you. And so we just cannot put worship in a box like that. And so just finding ways to, even on Sunday mornings, to show our congregations, for you guys to show your congregations, what diversity in worship really, really, really looks like without losing your own church's identity.
I would say for me, at Plymouth Covenant, it was interesting listening to Josh, both things that he mentioned. That's my situation. It's sound, and I love sound people. I can't live without them. But but it's a challenge to find consistency. In sound in our church, we have 3 services on a weekend, and we have a rotation system, and we have volunteers in place, and it takes humility to submit to a general direction where you submit your taste and your preference to the direction that's in place, and you say, okay, on a personal level, I might mix it this way, but, this is where we're going. So I submit myself to that, and whatever serves the purpose, that's what I'm going to do. So it's not about my taste, it's not about my preference, but it's about humility and serving the team, right? And if there's one thing I can encourage all of us here in the room is humility and a culture of honor among us in the team, just to honor and respect each other, value each other despite our differences. We have huge differences. But we belong together, and God has brought us together, and there has to be a level of commitment to each other. And I honor and respect your opinion and your feelings and your desire, and you respect mine, and that's how we kind of serve together. And in that same context, the second point of transition, I just moved to Twin Cities here, and I'm Bulgarian. I'm not American. So moved to the States 2 years ago. My wife is American. She's from Pennsylvania, but I come from the other side of the world. And I love America, but I just want to tell you that America is not the beginning and the end of the world. There's many more nations out there. And yeah, Jeff. Yeah, man. And with that, there's a lot of different cultures, of different customs, of different sounds, different expressions, and I've been part of that. And coming here, man, it's such an honor and such a blessing. But the truth is, the reality of the matter is that I come to a new place and I bring a lot of just new and different stuff. But yet, we all belong to one kingdom. It's the kingdom of God, and we worship one God. And we're different, but God is the same wherever you go in this world. And so here I am in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and I would never, ever have guessed in my life that I would end up in Minnesota, All I know about this state, it's cold, it's snowy, that's what I know. Now I moved here in April, and I'm like, wow, it's beautiful, It's sunny and friendly and whatnot, and everyone's telling me, oh, you wait. Okay, so we'll see. But point is this, Plymouth Covenant Church is a wonderful place, established, strong. There has been worship leadership before me that has left such a heritage, such an understanding of the depth of God. And here I am, and I know, and we know as a church that God brought us here. It's a miracle that I'm here. And so my prayer and the question I have is, God, what is next? So you brought me here with my profile, with my background, with my understanding. How can I serve those people? And so bringing that together and that point of transition that Josh described so well, we're all different. And I'm coming here and I want to serve the local congregation, want to serve the culture that I'm placed into, and just really finding the wisdom, the understanding, the way, the words, and the language with which I can serve those people. It's a challenge, but really it comes down to that: serve one another, doesn't it? So just want to encourage you guys, let's keep serving, not forget serving. Yes.
As I hear you all talk, I think it's important. I'm hearing so much good stuff. I'm taking notes over here. We can get so caught up in our platform being our opportunity for us to shine. And if we look at our teams and we're like, how come everybody's all about trying to fight for their spot? It's probably an indication of an insecurity of us as leaders. I think there's two parts to how we grow teams. The gift makes a room for the person, but a lot of times what we focus on is just the gift. We're like, I want somebody who can play. I just need a person who can play the guitar. And we're not as concerned about building the spiritual person and the character behind that gift. And whether we realize it or like it or not, when you step on this platform, you are in a position of spiritual leadership. And you have influence, and people look to you in a different way than if they're just sitting next to you. I wonder if a few of you could speak to some of the things that you do practically for yourself to not just prepare musically, but to prepare spiritually. There's people in this room who are worship leaders, and then there's people who are just on teams. And one is not better than the other, but we all have a responsibility to prepare ourselves. So would you just share a few things that are practical for you that you do with your team or you do personally to prepare spiritually to be a worshiper? Not to be perfect, but to be transparent and be a worshiper.
Yeah, so amazing that you just said that, Mark, because I actually just taught the workshop today on relationship. Relationship is the vitality of a worship team. There are so many different levels of a relationship that have to take place in order for your team to function correctly. And I don't have time to go through the whole workshop, but I'll just touch on it basically. I talked about your relationship with God, and that's how you prepare yourself. Because you can only take your team where you've been yourself and where God is taking you yourself. So when you're in the Word and when you dig into that time, and not just digging into that time with God so you can prepare yourself to worship, but digging into that time with Him because you love your Savior and because He's your Creator, and not because of what He's done for you, but because of who He is in your life and your heart and your spirit. And then that emanates out of you, and then that will be an infectious, good infectious that goes to your team. And then when they see that, then they're encouraged. They're encouraged to grow. They're challenged to grow. And it's not because you're telling them, you need to do this and you need to do that, you need to do that. It's because you're exemplifying it. And when you exemplify that, and then when they see also, too, touching on your relationship with your pastor, so vital. When you have a solid relationship with your pastor knows you and you know your pastor knows they can trust you to take the congregation where it needs to go, and you know you can trust your pastor with what he's asked you to or she's asked you to do. That is something that can create the most beautiful, authentic, intimate worship times with your team. When your team sees that you have that relationship with your pastor, they will trust you more. And then when you show your team that you care about them and you love them and you appreciate them, we touched on it earlier a little bit more, but when they know that you appreciate them for who they are as a person, who they are in their life, more than what they bring to the team, they will go around the world and back, not for you, but for Jesus Christ, because that's what they see in you. And then when you also take that time after spending that relationship with them to have that good structure on your team, there's no chaos, there's no question about it, but you take that time to really function your team with a spirit of excellence. I believe it is in Psalm, but it says everything should be done decently and in order. That's one of the scriptures that we use today in our session together. When you do things decently and in order, God can move through that. And then also in preparing, because worship is an overall aspect of lifestyle. When you have fun with your team, If everything that you do with your team is only just to come together to do worship services and you're not fellowshipping with them, and I'm talking about fellowship, and I'm not talking about how the Sunday service went, the Wednesday night service went, but talking about, hey, what movie did you go see? Hey, let's go out to eat. When you take time to get to know your team outside of just the ministry time that you guys do together, that makes that ministry time so much more special, so much more important, because you all love each other. And when you have the love of God flowing through you, there is nothing that the enemy can bring against your team to stop you from helping that atmosphere of Christ to be emanated in your sanctuary, in your congregation. So, there you go. Relationship.
I got something that I think is really, really important for us as we prepare our teams. I work with a lot of student teams here at North Central, and we have our rehearsal times, just like you have your rehearsal times. And one of the things that I'm determined, first of all, is to be a worshiper myself, so that I've got that time set aside. For me, it's in my basement. I don't personally want to be doing a whole lot of things on stage that I haven't already done in my closet, in my office downstairs, in my basement, worshiping the Lord. But then as a team, and this is tough because we all know we don't have enough rehearsal time, but to set aside some time in every rehearsal for some type of spiritual growth, team growth type of thing, and it's very challenging. I kind of look at it as tithe on time. A lot of people say, well, I don't have enough money to give. And the truth is, it's the other way around. You don't have, you got to give if you want to, it's like 90% after tithe is greater than 100% before tithe. Am I a bad mathematician? Is ever 90% after tithe is greater than 100% before tithe. So it's the same thing with time. You give God time as a resource. So you give God time at the beginning and allow the team to see that you value this coming together and worship. So we usually gather right down there, because we have a lot of classes in this room. Down there on the floor, we get in a circle and we'll pray together. But I like to change it up too, so I don't just, sometimes we'll put on a CD in here and turn the lights down, and everybody just paces around, just worships, and we sing together and stuff. Then we'll come together and we'll pray. Some days we'll share prayer requests. Say, hey, who has a need? We'll gather around somebody and just lay hands on them. This is instruments down. We've all come in. Maybe we had a little sound check first. Then we put the instruments down. We come down here, set it aside. And everybody say, man, how do we have time to do something like that? The thing is, how do you have time not to do this? Because guess what's going to happen when you have unity and how can you get on a stage and worship in front of people if you've never worshiped when there was no people there either? You got to develop that culture that we become worshipers as a team, so that when you're on stage, it's not like this big show. It's actually real. You've actually worshiped together off the stage before you actually worship together on the stage. So there's this beautiful stuff that happens. And then guess what? If you took 15 minutes to do that out of your rehearsal, maybe you only had 75 minutes, you only have an hour left. That hour you're going to use so much better. It's going to be so much better spent, because everybody's on point. Everybody's ready. They're unified. They're ready to go. And you'll be able to get more done in the 60 minutes than the 75 minutes without the time spent.
Can I say three?
Go ahead.
Three just really quick practical things that we do that I feel like contributes to the spiritual climate and being ready to worship together on a Sunday morning. We've used the word communion kind of as an overarching communion. I mean, worship is a time where we come in, we're in this union with the Lord, we're in this union with each other as we're together. So first of all, I try to take a personal time and just spend it with the Lord and just reverently asking Him if my relationships are right. I try to do that kind of as I'm preparing in worship, and sometimes God will reveal someone on the team that, man, you should just check in with them or do this, or maybe it's something with your wife that you said or did, and just giving God that place of priority to speak to the relationships in my life so that I'm coming to the table in right relationship as I approach the throne. Second thing, we've started doing worship nights in homes. Our worship team, if all of our families and peoples came in, probably about 80 people, and they haven't all came yet, because we'll be in serious trouble if they do. But we'll just share a meal. We do it once a month, and then we get out a guitar, and kids are running around, and it's crazy, and we're just worshiping, because it's not about a stage. That was never the New Testament model anyway, that we're up on a stage, and there's people out there. So we just I think a team that worships together in a home can do it more easily in a stage. And then the third thing that I would throw out there is really making sure that I'm unified as a worship leader with my senior pastor. Senior pastors have different levels of how they want to be invested and how much input they want to have. Some are really hands-off, some like to micromanage a little bit. But regardless of that, there's something significant that when a worship leader comes together on a leadership level with the senior pastor and hearing what they're doing. Sometimes I'll go back if we're in a series and listen to the sermon again from the week before and say, hey, I think he's going this way. And throughout the weekend, sometimes he prepares late and sometimes he gets inspiration on Saturday night. But I'm going to check in and make sure that I am serving his leadership because he's the God-given authority in that place. And in that, as we're unified, I feel like cool stuff happens when you get the authority in the right order in the church too.
I would say that for me personally, the weekend worship time is really the end result of what's happening for me during the week. Like I start with really living a lifestyle of a worshiper, just praying and just singing a new song in the car and in my office, at home, just having worship music inspire me and run through my veins, man, just all the time. And so I don't choose what we do and music-wise and the songs just based on what's current and what's running on the radio or what everyone's singing. God is speaking locally to our congregation, and that's the stuff that I try to find. God, what are you saying? What are you speaking? What are you pointing out? And those are the things that I capture and kind of like to go with and just help our congregation not just hear the message, but also declare it, in our songs. And I meet, just like you, I meet with our pastor once a week, every Tuesday, and he's one of the best pastors I know. I mean, we sit together, we drink coffee. There's this local shop, Dumb Bros Coffee. I love it, And we sit together and we talk and we discuss and we share and we dream, we exchange, and he tells me what he's thinking, and I capture those things as well. And then one other thing I would say to me has become so valuable is I like to go in the sanctuary when no one's around and it's empty. And I just walk around and sometimes it's quiet, and I just listen to the voice of God, man. Just hear, Holy Spirit, what are you doing? What are you emphasizing? What are you saying? Where are you leading? And all those things. And out of that heart of worship, songs just come up. And like you, Jeff, I go back to the office or to my quiet place and I play them. I go through them and I feel like, that might be something for next week, but maybe this week we need to go that direction. And so it's a combination of things, of elements that play together that really at the end help me to establish something that ultimately we do on a weekend. And I communicate that with the team, but I don't just communicate the songs. I communicate everything that I've experienced throughout the week so they know the heart behind the songs. They know why we're singing what we're singing. And that helps us unify in that just half an hour of worship expression,
I was just going to say really practically, something that I do to just kind of like always be in that state of worship is some of you maybe have like a 5-minute commute to work, but some of you might have longer. Just like listening to worship music in the car on the commute. Like it's super easy to turn on the radio and listen to like your favorite morning show or whatever. But a lot of the times what I will do is I'll put on a worship CD or I'll listen to the set list for the coming Sunday, and I'll just do that my whole way to work, my whole way back from work. And that's just like an extra 20 to 40 minutes a day of worship that I may not have had when you get busy and you at work, and for those of you that have kids and then you're doing this and you're doing that. And I have totally been that person in my car with like one hand on the steering wheel and like raising one hand in my car, and people are probably like, what is she doing? But I've had some really amazing worship times in my car with just me and my phone plugged in or my CD player. So just something practical, like to get yourself, even if you're like on your way to worship practice or on your way to church in the morning, just like to have your car kind of be like that sanctuary. Or I've even done where I drive with no music and I'm just praying and just not being, because it's real easy to get in your car and get distracted by the radio and things. So just like I kind of try to take that time as like part of my quiet time for the week, because you're going to sit in traffic anyway, most of you, so you might as well make it worth your time.
That's good, Gina. I resonate with so many of the things that have been said. I recently had a conversation with our team about here's how you need to think about, here's how we need to start our rehearsals and the Sunday morning sound check and so forth. And we like to let some things happen sort of organically. But I said, you could really just help me even as a worship leader, and then let's help each other, is that when you come in and sit down and plug in, we have a set time for show up, line check, and then a set time for an actual downbeat, if you will. But I said, when you plug in and you're noodling around on your instrument or whatever, if you would just noodle around on something that we're doing that day, something that we're playing that morning, maybe even just the opening tune, and keyboardists, just start noodling there and finding those sounds and finding that, don't jump into some Lynyrd Skynyrd lick that you like or whatever. And then I'll show up and I've already had the singers backstage, and we'll come out and we'll just start singing along with whatever's playing, and we'll let our sound check ears and all that kind of stuff get set during that time, rather than now we're going to check the drums and we're going to check the bass, we're going to check things. Just let it happen organically. And even the prayer time out of that happen a little more organically, and the worship time be expressed organically out of that, rather than at 7-11 we're going to pray and then we just let some things happen organically. That's been sort of a new system for us this past year, and it's been nice.
Okay, mine's quick. I think this is an actual practical tool per se, but it's kind of more of a mentality. I think that one of the best things to do to prepare a team is to dismiss the idea of a Sunday morning failure. Because really, with God, there really isn't. There are always things that you can improve upon. Things could have been better. We could have, there's so many different things, but just everybody on the team understanding that when we come together, we're going to do the best we can. We're going to play skillfully, as the Bible says. We're going to rely on the anointing. But from God's perspective, I think we need to dismiss this idea. Was this a good Sunday or was this a bad Sunday? Was this, I think that gives me personally a lot of peace. Before I was a worship pastor, there's just nerves. That you're not doing it to impress people, but still, we're fleshly people, we're human, and so we care about, if something was wrong or if something was off. And so the more we grow into teaching that mentality that, everything can be improved upon. However, when we come into the presence of God, we prepared as much as we can, we rely on the anointing, and we leave the results in His hands.
I'm just amazed, looking down this row of amazing leaders who've been doing this for years and years, and are just, their heart for Minnesota, the heart for the Twin Cities and the local church is just astounding to me. I'm really young. I'm just starting off in ministry, and I think the best thing I can say, personal advice that I have from just this past year, is seek out someone who's farther ahead of you. Seek out a mentor. Seek out someone who's going to speak truth into your life, who's going to be honest with you, who's going to call you out on things that you don't want to be called out on. It's going to make you so much better as a leader, as a worshiper. I was so touched this morning as Chuck just shared about how true worship is someone who touches the heart of God and then releases that to the people. But it doesn't just happen in our services. It needs to be a lifestyle thing. And I need these people that are surrounding me right now to call me out on things. So young worshipers and old worshipers, maybe it doesn't matter who you are. Seek out someone who's had different experience than you, who's maybe a little bit farther down the road from you, and seek out that wisdom in your life. That's a great thing to help prepare.
It's so good. So much good stuff here. I want to make sure we have time to break out. But at the end of the day, we are worship leaders of ourselves before we are worship leaders of others. Here's what we're going to do. I want to just say thank you to every single one of you. You don't know how incredible this is to have a team of people from across the state gather together and be willing to be honest in front of people they know and don't know. And I want to ask, as we break into small groups of 3 or 4, that you'd have that same vulnerability. And I want to challenge you on this. I'm going to ask you to talk about the same question that we asked first. What's a current challenge that you have? But I want you to look at it differently, not as a challenge, but as an opportunity for growth. And so here's the way I want you to have your conversation. This is our challenge. Help me figure out what the opportunity is and have a discussion together, be honest, but encourage each other, because we're not Eeyore, all right? Eeyore's like, oh, it's horrible. It's never going to get better. I went to Australia 2 summers ago, and here's what the Aussies are. They are the most positive and hopeful and lofty and optimistic people I've ever met in my life. And they walk into a room and they They don't walk up and they go, hey, how you doing? And 2 people clap at the beginning. They're like, good, 2 of you are here today. I'm glad. You know what they say? They go, it is so good to be in a faith-filled room today. And I go, I'm not faith-filled today, but I want to be. I want that. And so you have to lead the culture that we step into. If you want the culture to be bigger and hopeful and positive and optimistic and believing in faith for what God can do, then we have to start talking that way. So we're going to break out. Here's what we're going to do. The 15 of us are going to come and join your groups. So in just a minute, I'm going to release you. I want you to get into a group of 2 or 3, probably 3 or 4 people. And I want you to ask the question, what is your challenge? What is your opportunity? And we're going to spend the next 15 minutes talking about our real things in this room, not just here, and we're going to do it with you. You guys ready? Are you ready? Ready, set, go.